Hello and welcome to the Love Energetics podcast. This is the space where science, spirituality, and mindset work become one with the mission of empowering you to reach your full potential and live the life you daydream about. My name's Marea. I'm a scientific intuitive manifestation coach and neuroscience expert that shares the knowledge and tools that will ascend you to your highest levels of growth and expansion. If you're ready to leave a life of settling and playing small behind, and instead step into the highest version of you that has mastered self-love, self-image, effortless confidence, and is achieving soul-led success, then this is the place for you. And with that, let's get into today's podcast episode. All right, so we are back with today's podcast episode. The theme of this episode is without this, your life will never truly be your own. And another segue into that is essentially stop taking other people's advice because it's ruining your life. And with this new podcast episode, this first episode of 2026, this is a good one. This is something that I have been downloading on my daily outdoor walks, which is a story for another day, but I am doing 75 hard challenge right now. That was an intuitively led decision, but the outdoor walk portion of the 75 hard challenge, as difficult as it can be with these really cold temperatures, it has been an absolute game changer for my intuition and just channeling in really great ideas, really great downloads, like literally having my best ideas out there. So it's worth it just for that, even though it is so cold and uncomfortable, but we're making it through. So yeah, that is why I want to talk about this message, because it has come down and been channeled through me a couple times now, and it's a big theme in my life. It has been a big theme for my life, but it's also a very, very important collective energetic lesson for everybody. When I say collective, I mean like everybody in the world essentially is kind of going through a lesson of this in some way, shape, or form, whether it's in their individual life or it's through some type of collective society situation. Probably a little bit of both if I had to guess. And it's really important. This is our really, really important piece of information that will change your life, because it completely changed my life. It continues to change my life the more and more I lean into this knowledge, these tools, and these practices that I'm going to share in this podcast episode. And it's really important that we learn this lesson now, because we are being presented with this lesson. I'll go into it more. I'm rambling. I'm already starting to ramble, but I'll go into it more, obviously. But it's really important that we learn this lesson now before this lesson continues to grow and bring more and more obstacles our way. So I cannot wait to share this with you. I hope that you really enjoy this episode. And if you do, let me know. It would mean the absolute world to me if you could rate this podcast 5 stars and leave a review if you really enjoyed it. And actually, for a limited time, I just made my 2026 version of my Full Potential Planner. I don't know if I've really talked about it too much on the podcast, but I have a planner and a manifestation tool, all in one, where you can keep up with your manifestation and energetic and healing practices, while also just time blocking and organizing your day and goal setting and vision boarding, just anything that you could think of when it comes to organizing your life, achieving your full potential, manifesting your dream life, all in one. And even habits, alignment routines. But I just updated, so I make it every year, or I revamp it and level it up and put in upgrades every single year. I did my 2026 one, and for a limited time, if you send me a screenshot, you can email it or DM me on Instagram at Marea Manifests. And if you send me a screenshot of the review, 5-star rating, and following this podcast on either Spotify, Apple, or subscribing on YouTube, then I will send you completely free of charge my 2026 Full Potential Planner. It's a digital download. You can download it on your iPad. You can print it out. It is friggin' awesome. I literally use it every single day. It is friggin' awesome. So anyway, just wanted to let you guys know of that cool little special I'm doing before I get into the details of this amazing podcast episode. So let's fully get into it, all right? This topic today, without this, your life will never be truly your own. What am I talking about? So this is kind of like a part 2 of last podcast episode, where I talked about how It was kind of like an overview, very high level introduction to intuition and all the different components of intuition, all the things that you could do with intuition. I kind of really focused on it being more so like the language of the universe. That was really the approach I took to really put all the different components of it together because there's so many. But today I want to focus on one very important component of intuition. So that's why I'm thinking this is a part 2. And it kind of relates to the initial premise of my previous episode on intuition, where I talked about how it's so much more than a gut feeling. And if you didn't listen to that episode, I highly recommend that you listen to that. You can listen to this first and then go back to that. You can still kind of like they're not like prerequisites, but I would say if you want to know more about all the different components of intuition, you'll want to listen to that one. Today's focus is going to be more about one component of intuition specifically. So feel free to listen to that one now, then this one, or you can listen to this one. And if you're curious, go back to the other one. So that is that, just setting the foundation there. And so in that previous episode, I talked about how intuition is so much more than a gut feeling, because that is the main way it is described in the spiritual world and just like general. Like if you heard my previous podcast episode, I talked about like the definition in like Google, if you search it, and it's basically talking about a gut feeling for the most part. And really, that's only 5% of the equation. So intuition is so much more than that. But if we kind of just stay on the same vein of using gut feelings as a form of intuition, there's so much more than the gut feeling component, but that kind of lines up with your inner knowing part of your intuition. So I like to refer to intuition a lot of times as like my personal advisor, like my trusted advisor that I will go to make decisions about my life. And so that is really the focus of this component of intuition. And so I'm going to refer to it a lot today as your internal guidance system, aka like your internal GPS. It's telling you if you're able to connect with your intuition through your body and just kind of, I'll go into the different ways that you can connect with your intuition, but when you connect to your internal guidance system, you are going to get a very clear idea of what is right for you and what is not right for you, and which way should you go, what decision should you make at this point in time, being at a fork in the road, which way should you go? And that is the intuition practice that I'm going to hone in on today, because without this, without your intuition, without your internal guidance system, your life is never going to be your own. And the reason I said that, and the reason I kind of said earlier that stop taking people's advice, it's ruining your life kind of thing, is because so many people will ignore their internal guidance system, ignore what they think is right for them because somebody else told them, oh no, you shouldn't do that, you should do this, this is the better way. And it's so common for us nowadays to take advice from other people instead of doing something that we think is best for us. And that is the completely wrong way to go about it. This is the collective lesson that all of us are here to learn in some way, shape, and form. I can almost guarantee that you are going through this right now in your life. If not, you've gone through it previously in your life. And we are all going through this right now at a societal level, okay? So essentially, the lesson is, and I'm going to go way deeper into this in the podcast episode, but the lesson is that no one knows what is better for you than you. No one's advice is going to supersede your internal guidance's advice. And the thing that I want to really distinguish here, because one thing about the spiritual world, the manifestation world, energetics, when you really dive into, learning the laws of the universe and how things work in this life, physically and energetically, there is going to be a theme of nuance, a theme of gray areas. Nothing about this work is black or white. It is gray, and it's very situationally dependent. And so it is very important that every topic that I talk about, just know that there is going to be nuance to it, and even more reason to hone in on your intuition so that you can work in the nuances of your own life. But what I want to say is, are there times where the thing that you think you should do is wrong? Not necessarily wrong, but you might think that you're connecting to your internal guidance system, but you're actually not. You might be connecting more to a limiting belief, a limited perception, a limited view that you're not aware that is that limited, or you are making decisions based on something traumatic that happened to you, or you're making decisions based on what you think other people will think. All of that stuff is bleh. It is not your internal guidance system, and we are going to go deep into distinguishing what the differences between those two things are. Okay, so I'm just going to give a quick high-level overview of what I'm going to be sharing in this episode, just so you have an idea of what we're going to cover. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into explaining what I mean by our internal guidance system as that form of intuition. So I'm going to go into exactly what that means and why it is of utmost importance to ensure that you are living your own life, not what somebody else thinks you should be doing with your life, and following your own free will. And then I'm going to explain to all the different reasons as to why many of us have our internal guidance system shut off. You know, she's kind of just sleeping. She's just not awake, not fully alert, not fully there. She's kind of just hanging in the background, or just very hidden, you know, covered under a bunch of crap, or just silenced because of so much noise coming at us all the time. I'm going to go into the details of what that is, why that is, and how you can start to shift that. And then we're going to close out the episode with the top 4 important things that you can do leaving this podcast episode to start waking up your own internal guidance system. And we're going to leave with a full understanding why you are never going to want to doubt yourself again. You are never going to want to take someone's advice without first checking in with your internal guidance system first. All right, so let's go into a little bit deeper here what the internal guidance system is, which is what I'm talking about is your intuition. This is just like one form of your intuition that we're looking at right now. And essentially, like I said before, it's your internal GPS. Also, I would say your trusted advisor. Your inner guidance system means that you know what's best for you. No one else knows what's better for you than you in your internal guidance system. Okay, that was built for your life and how you should carry out your life in the most aligned way possible. Everybody is built with intuition. Okay, we all have this skill. We all have this gift within ourselves, even if it's asleep, even if you feel like you haven't experienced what intuition is like, even if you feel like yours is just completely turned off for good. You can turn it back on, and you have this built within you. Okay, everybody comes with one. So that's something really, really important to highlight, is that everybody has this skill and everybody can get themselves to a place where they are able to know that it's their inner guidance system and use it for every decision that they make in life. It's kind of like when I think of it being asleep, my like fun little metaphor I came up with the other day was, it's like Sleeping Beauty. You know how she is like sleeping until her prince comes and like kisses her or whatever? I'm pretty sure, is that the right Disney story? I think so. But anyway, you know how she's sleeping and then the prince comes and kisses her and she's woken up and like all is well. That's like basically what I'm talking about here, is your inner guidance system is there. She's just sleeping. And once you metaphorically come in there and wake her up with like the prince woke up Sleeping Beauty, then you are good to go. And of course it comes with practice, right? Anything that, even though we are all born with intuition is still a skill set to make sure that you are making it as precise and accurate as possible and not letting certain things kind of tamper with the accuracy. You know, there's still so much I can go into on all of those components. And so if you're interested, can definitely talk about it in a future episode. But what I'm going to talk about here is the important piece to know is that you have an internal guidance system, you have intuition, you are built with it. You can wake it up at any point in time. In fact, I would say a lot of you have probably had like glimpses of clarity here and there, but the problem is that you don't know how to turn that on at all times. And I'm going to help you with that when I go through all the information in this episode. And so the other thing, just to describe this internal guidance system, is going back to the GPS example, is that it is a great guidance system to tell you what decision to make when you are at a fork in a road, when you are at a fork in the road. Do I go left? Do I go right? Do I do this? Do I do that? Your internal guidance system is so key for this. A lot of times when people are navigating ambiguity, they tend to ask other people what they should do instead of checking in with their internal guidance system. And I'll go into my caveats about taking advice from people, but at the end of the day, what you don't want to do is take someone else's advice if it goes against your internal guidance system. This guidance system, it's an inner knowing. It's just like something that you come to know. It's just this knowing of what is right and wrong for you. And I'm going to explain what that feels like later on in the episode. But like I said earlier, with the subtle feeling and how the guidance system is typically like covered by other things and silenced by other things. Some of those things, which we are going to go into the episode deeper on, is an unregulated nervous system, limiting beliefs, limiting perceptions, societal pressures, parents, teachers, you literally name it. We're going to talk about that, but it is typically silenced. The key is that when our intuition is silenced, we need to make space, take all that crap, get rid of it so that we can give our intuition room to speak up, to be heard, to be seen and felt. And that is really the only way that you are going to be able to know that you are following the path that is most aligned for you. And so with that, I am going to go into all of the reasons as to why we are disconnected from our internal guidance system. And I'm going to start off with societal programming. So there's kind of like two pieces of this that kind of dovetail together. So it's societal programming mixed with how you were raised. So when I talk about the societal program, I'm going to talk about how you were raised from like a societal matrix schooling perception. And then when I talk about how you're raised in the second part, it's going to be more about like parents stuff because that is a huge part of this. So when I talk about societal programming, I am talking about the way that we are taught to think and act and do in school growing up, you know, from kindergarten through 12th grade and then into college, really. We're brought up that the teachers know best, and we are taught to listen to the rules that they follow, to learn and follow the things that they tell us to do and the ways that we have to learn and what makes us a good student versus a bad student. All of that is quieting your inner guidance system, because at the end of the day, when we are children, that's actually when we are connected most to our intuition. And as we go through that schooling and as we go through these ways that we are taught to be, it really distances us from that true self, that inner voice more and more, because, you know, we're growing up in society. It is very naturally conditioned in us to want to be accepted, right? That's like a primal instinct is, you know, you want to be feeling like you're a part of the tribe. You want to be included. You want to be feeling like you're a part of a community. And so a lot of times people end up ignoring their inner guidance system to do what they feel like they should do to fit in, or they should be like this person so that they can be liked here. Essentially, with schooling, school trains us that there is just one way of doing things, one way to live. You go to school, you go to college, you get a job, you work that job, you buy a house, you get married, you start a family, and you retire. Anything that falls out of those confines is putting you away from the tribe, essentially. There's a lot of pressure to fit in and follow the mold, and there are a lot of pressure and fear-based belief systems that come as a result of coming out of that. And a lot of times, our internal guidance system, we are not meant to follow that path to a T, or even like on that timeline that we think we should, right? I feel like even when it comes to timing, there is so much pressure for people in their 20s, late 20s, right? And then by 30, you got to be married, you got to have kids, you got to do this, you got to do that. And you know, you can't just start over a new career because whatever you do right out of college, like you can't just like change that 5 years into your career. And oh my God, like the thought of being an entrepreneur is not taught in school at all. So there's just so many things that we are taught to do, like a very one-track mind type of situation. And there's so many other ways that you are probably meant to live your life outside of this one way, because everybody has their own specific path that they are built to live and do things and achieve in their life. And it just does not logically make sense if you think about it to go down one same path for everybody. Just think about it. It does not add up. And just to kind of go into a couple more examples of that, like think about going into the matrix thing from like a government perspective. A lot of times we just do things because that's just the way that it is versus questioning things. Why are we doing this? You know, there's just a lack of looking within and more just doing things because that's just how it is. So that's something I think is important to marinate on as well. And then the other thing that I want to talk about too is like when it comes to like following your dream, I really want to talk about a lot of career stuff with that as well, because I think as we go through school, we are heavily programmed to do like normal type of jobs that you think that people think are like safe bets to get or are safe bets to make money. There's a lot of job stability. Or when it comes to picking a college or even going to college, like there's so much pressure to go to college and you're almost like an outcast if you don't. Or for example, say you want to design your own fashion brand. You want to go to school for fashion for that. But then the whole time that you are having this dream built up, people are telling you that there's way too much competition. There's way too many fashion brands out there. How are you going to stand out? How are you going to do this? You should just, be a fashion merchandiser at one of the big companies instead. These are how little things get kind of nudged to you over time that take you farther away from your internal guidance system, because a lot of times you are getting told that you need to play it safe. You need to go after the things that are more realistic, and that takes us away from following the path that we are meant to follow. So that is one of the ways that we are disconnected from our inner guidance system. That's kind of like the societal programming spiel. So basically, it starts in school, goes all the way through college, really gets affected with our careers, I would say a lot. And then also just trying to fit in on a social level, doing things to be liked by others, doing things to be accepted, to fit in. All of that stuff just really shuts down our inner guidance system because we are so focused on doing things the way that we were taught and told to do in order to survive, basically. And then that really dovetails nicely into the how we were raised type of situation, where I said that I was going to focus more on the parents with that. One of the reasons that this is such a prevalent thing that affects so many people is the conditional love model that we operate from as a society. I did talk about this more in depth in a previous podcast episode. I think it was something about like the two main reasons why you're stuck in life. I talked about the difference between unconditional love and conditional love. And so as we are kids growing up, we are taught to follow a model of conditional love. Our parents will applaud us for being a good kid, for getting good grades, for doing your chores, or for being quiet when you're at a restaurant, things like that. Like you're just praised for doing things that make you a good kid. And so as a child, you are conditioned, you are programmed to follow this conditional love model. I need to be this way. I need to be the way that my parents want me to be, so that my parents will love me, they'll accept me, they'll take care of me, so that they won't abandon me. So there's a lot of fear behind that programming that affects us at way deeper levels than we even realized. And that really carries a lot into our adult life for so many of us. So there's the conditional love thing with our parents. And of course, this happens going back to the school thing as well. And the friend thing as well. Oh, if I do this for this girl, she'll want to be my friend. And then, I'll have a new friend and I'll feel like I belong and I have support and community and connection. Or with the teacher, I want the teacher to give me good grades, so I got to make sure I study really hard, and I got to make sure that I, do, or even like when it comes to like getting into a college, right? You put like a college on the pedestal and you're like, I have to do all these different things in order for them to accept me, in order for them to think I'm worthy enough to be accepted. So there's all these things that I think the main thing to take away from that is they are not things that you're doing because you feel like they are aligned to your internal guidance system. Like, this is what I want to do that makes me really fulfilled and what makes me really happy and what feels right for me. You're doing them as a way to feel accepted, to follow this pursuit of feeling worthy and deserving and loved and accepted in your life. And so just the way that society is programmed and just the way that it runs, that is what many of us fall into the trap of. And I find that the parent example is really, really, really prevalent in certain phases. I would say a lot, like when it comes to picking a college, to picking a job, and just really on a lot of decisions in life. Maybe not like this is, I would say, is on a case by case basis, but I would say a lot of people, including myself, and this is, part of my experience that has me really feeling so passionate about this topic because I've experienced this firsthand for myself. I've seen how this has taken me away from my own internal guidance system and how it has taken me off my path, had me, going in loops, being more stuck than I had to be, feeling really empty and unfulfilled for a lot of parts of my life. This really, really influenced me and in a lot of ways disconnected me from my true self, my soul self, and all of that because I was so focused on doing things that other people thought I should do. And so the biggest part of that is with the parents. If you have parents that are present in your life, there is a very high chance that they are putting their perceptions of what they think you should and shouldn't do on you, and you are being influenced by that, whether it is consciously or subconsciously. I would say most of the time we are not super privy to how much our parents are influencing us on what we should and shouldn't do. And you will, if you think back to, college decisions, think about how your parents, what did they say to influence you on a certain school versus a different school, or like location wise. I know so many parents, really try to manipulate children into staying close to home because they didn't want their kids to be away from them. That's a really big thing. Or when it comes to jobs, like I said before, you have this dream of designing your own fashion brand, and your mom or your dad is like, you got to be more realistic. Like, that's really hard. That's a really competitive market. That's really saturated. Like, you really need to think about something that has good job stability, that is going to make you money, that you could get a pension from, that you could stay in, because that's just the way that our parents were raised. And the thing that I don't think a lot of people realize either is that our parents are dictating what is best for us, for their kids, based on their own life experiences. What were they not able to do? How can they live vicariously through us? If they didn't get to live in a house with stability, or live in a house that had stability with money or family, they are going to put that on their children and, really harp on if, for example, say a mother grew up in a family where her parents were divorced. She's going to harp on her children to, find a safe partner that they can, be with for life. And they're really going to push that. Or, if a parent grew up poor, they're going to push for their children to find a stable, well income paid job so that their children don't have to live out the experience that they did. But the key piece of this is that none of that is what's right for you. The things that didn't work out in their life, that is not dictating how you should live your life. And especially if you feel like it gets to the point where it feels like your life is not truly your own because you're not actually making your own decisions. You are hearing decisions from other people that, especially parents, from a young age, we are conditioned to really seek approval from them, seek love from them because they were our caretakers. So it really comes full force in adulthood where we are taught to really seek their approval. So when we are hearing what they think we should do, we almost just can do it without even thinking about if it's right for you or not. Or maybe you do. Maybe you did get that internal guidance system clicked on. Like, maybe you're like, you know what? It feels like, for example, you have the dream for the fashion brand, and then your parents are telling you to be more realistic and get a job at a well-known fashion brand that has stability and this and that. Then you might feel a little sullen inside, like, wow, okay, I guess like life's about, settling, like, I guess I, don't have the ability to follow my own dreams. And that, by disconnecting us from our internal guidance system, we are no longer following the path that we are meant to follow, because your desires that you have for your life, they are very intentional. They are not accidental. The desires that you have for your life are here for a reason. So it is very, very important that you connect to your internal guidance system so that you fulfill those. Because the more that you disconnect from your internal guidance system, the less of the life you're meant to be living you are living. And you are instead living so your parents can live vicariously through you, living to please others, living to fit in. And from someone who has done all of these things, I am speaking from experience, and all that does is leave you empty, unfulfilled, and just stuck in life, quite frankly. And it just puts you off from your goals and dreams. So when you look at your life, you are living a life that is for other people. You're living a life that is dimming your light, that is keeping you small, and you just have these dreams off in the distance that you want, but you don't feel like you can go after for all of these different reasons that are disconnecting you from your internal guidance system. So I went really deep into that one. I didn't even expect it. So that is kind of the how we were raised parent type of thing in the conditional love that we just talked about. And so then the other thing I want to go into is why we seek advice from others. So whether that is parents, or maybe that's friends, or maybe you're going to a therapist, maybe you're seeking advice from a therapist. The reason that you look to others to give you advice or to help you decide something is because you don't trust yourself to make the right decision. Let me say that again. You are seeking advice from other people, seeking someone else to make a decision for you, basically, because you do not trust yourself to make the right decision for yourself. Okay? So that stems from self-image wounds. And if you've heard me talk before, you know that the reason I call this podcast the Love Energetics Podcast is because self-love is the foundation of everything in life. It is the key to life. But self-love and self-image go hand in hand, and you cannot have a high self-image without self-love. And so basically, when I'm talking about self-image wounds, the ones that there's so many. I mean, not so many, but there are a few core ones, and they split into, a little bit more nuanced things. But one of the core self-image wounds is the ability to believe in yourself, the ability to believe in your capabilities and your ideas, and to trust yourself, to know what's right for you. And if you do not believe in yourself, then you are not going to trust your decisions. And if you do not believe in yourself and your abilities, you're always going to look for someone outside of you, because you don't think that you are capable of making this decision the right way on your own. And that is detrimental for your energy field. It is detrimental for manifestation, and it is detrimental for your intuition. What I don't want you to think is that the way that you've been thinking, if you've been someone that does this, it doesn't make you wrong. It doesn't make you messed up or anything like that. It doesn't mean anything negative about you. It's not your fault. We have all been like this, and so many of us are like this, or else I wouldn't be talking about this topic, right? I've spent at least 25 years of my life. I mean, honestly, I would say I spent almost 30 years of my life. It wasn't until I really went through my Saturn return last year and went through my spiritual awakening round 2 that I really, really got to the roots of just how much I was not making full decisions based on my internal guidance system. I had come a long way, but when it came to every area of my life, I really did not look at the deeper levels of that until this past year. So you could say I went 30 years dealing with this, even as I started going through all this subconscious reprogramming work. There are deep, deep layers to this that stem from childhood. So it's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong, and don't blame yourself. Do not beat yourself up for this. I am not trying to lecture you or be hard on you for this. I want you to understand that we were all programmed this way. Everybody was, and the odds were stacked against us, and they are intentionally designed that way, because imagine how powerful we could all be if we were all fulfilling the soul path that we were meant to live, and we all were connected to our intuition and believed in ourselves. It's not designed the world is not designed to do that right now, because we would be very powerful. We'd be a very powerful society if we were built that way. But the important thing is that you were meant, if you are listening to this right now, you were meant to hear this. Your soul self planned, and I'm going to make a podcast episode about your higher self, your soul self. I'll go into the nuances of that in a future episode, but your higher self planned for you to listen to this so that you can start course correcting, listening to your intuition, and taking back control of your own life. Okay. This was divinely planned for you to hear this today, whatever day it is. You were meant to hear this. Okay. And I want to say that it is easy for us to fall into the trap that we think others know better than us because of all the things that I've already said. But, the way that we are raised and society's built, it is not conducive to achieving unconditional self-love and having a high self-image. And if you want to hear more about that topic, I talked about it in a previous episode. The 2 major reasons why you're stuck. I go into that a lot. I feel like a lot of my first few podcast episodes definitely talk about that too, because it's such an important part of my story and all the things that have changed my life in the most amazing, beautiful, long-lasting way possible. Definitely go back, go look into that. If you are curious and you want me to go deeper into it, I'm happy to do that in a future episode as well. Because it is more conducive for us to have a lower self-image, not be set up to trust our inner guidance system. It makes sense that we are going to think that if someone has something that they want, or if someone has something that we want, they achieved a goal that we want to achieve, that they must know better than we do on how to achieve that. And obviously, when I say that out loud, it makes sense, right? But what I want you to really understand is that the way that one person achieves that goal, right? Say, for example, me creating this business of being a intuitive energetic healer, a manifestation coach, helping people transform their lives and bridging spirituality, the science elements, the mindset work. I'm not the first person to do this, and I'm certainly not going to be the last. And the way that one person had success with this type of business is not going to be the way that is going to bring me success in my business. Everybody's path is intentionally designed differently. And the reason for that is because we are all built different. We are all blessed with different types of skill sets, different levels of those skill sets. We are all planned to have different experiences in this life, different lessons, different perceptions, and different type of journeys that are supposed to look different from other people. There is not one right way to do things. And if you just go off of somebody else's path, again, you're not living your own life. You're living their life. You have to do what is right for you. And the only way to do that is by trusting your intuition, your internal guidance system, and waking her or him or whatever, Sleeping Beauty, wake her the F up, okay? And with that, I'm ready to share my little caveat on taking people's advice, okay? So many people, including myself, have, a mentor that they learn from, or, a girl group, or, if you're a guy, you got guy friends. A lot of people take advice from their friends, their therapist, their mentor, their teacher. Is that wrong? No, it's not that you can never ask anybody their perception or their advice again. There's nuance, right? This is the gray area that we all talk about, okay? There is nuance to this. With this nuance, it doesn't mean that you could never get advice from anybody again, right? Because, it's good to learn. I would say that there are certain circumstances where it makes sense to hear somebody else's perspective. It makes sense to quote unquote get an advice from somebody else, especially someone that you are paying for as a coach or a mentor. That totally makes sense. But what you want to do is, if you are paying a coach, paying a mentor, anybody of that nature, you are paying somebody for basically their advice and their perspective. You want to make sure that you are still checking in with your internal guidance system. For all of my clients, all of my mentorship students, every single person I have ever done an intuitive read for, all of that, I always make sure that everything resonates with them, right? That it aligns with their internal guidance system. I would never expect somebody to take advice that doesn't feel right for them. And granted, again, there is nuance, right? There are limiting beliefs. People doubt their capabilities. People have limited perceptions. People, your ego could come in. You might have fear. You might have a trauma experience that is holding you back. Not all of that, right? But if there is something that, if you do know how to distinguish between those things and you are connected to your internal guidance system, that internal guidance system is always going to supersede any advice you give. Even if you're talking to a therapist, even if you're talking to a friend, even if you're talking to a teacher, you want to, yes, getting another perspective can be really helpful, especially if you are in a negative spiral and if you are stuck in a limited perception. It might be helpful to hear somebody else's perception to expand your mind, but it doesn't mean that you do whatever they tell you to do blindly. You don't just follow what somebody else is telling you to do blindly, especially if it feels restrictive and it just doesn't feel right. And I'm going to get into this at the end of the episode when I talk about the 4 different things to wake you up here. You want to make sure that you are distinguishing with those things on how this feels. Okay. So don't just follow people's advice blindly, but you can still talk to your friends and, nuance, of course. You can still talk to your friends. You can still hear their perceptions, but take everything with a grain of salt. Okay. Because a lot of people don't do this type of work, and a lot of people have their own limited perceptions that they are putting on you. So I did want to talk about this. So the thing about when you're asking other people's advice, whether it is a parent, a friend, a therapist, a teacher, I would say, if people who are in this type of space, I would say like a similar space to what I'm in, they're intuitive, they are very familiar with neuroscience and subconscious programming and energetics and things like that. They're usually very good. I'm not saying everybody, but for the most part, we as, a type of job situation, we train ourselves to not let limited perceptions infiltrate the advice we're giving, right? That's a whole point of intuition. If you have mastered your intuition, you are on the journey of mastering your intuition at a extremely precise, scientific, accurate level. You are not letting perceptions get in there. You are giving the most high frequency, source aligned information. So when you get quote unquote advice or guidance from an intuitive, it's not going to have any limited perceptions. But for the average person that is not a extreme expert and dedicates a lot of their life to being aware of how the subconscious affects you and your belief systems and your thought patterns and why you do what you do. Most people, when they give advice, it is from their own limited perception, their own limiting beliefs, their own past experiences. And another law of the universe you probably heard me talk about, we live in an inside out world, and whatever is going on in your internal world is being reflected out to you. So somebody else's experiences is based on their own internal world. So what's happened to them doesn't mean it's going to happen to you. And for them to give advice on that, it's not going to be really necessarily helpful for you in a lot of cases. And also, if somebody, for example, if your friend is giving you dating advice, but she has a lot of her own limiting beliefs on men being loyal, men being faithful, like maybe she's been cheated on, and then she is giving you advice out of that limiting belief perception, that is not going to be helpful for you, because then she's giving you advice that is aligned to a limiting belief, and that's not going to help you create the dream love life that you want. So those are the kind of things to be cognizant of. Again, you can still talk to your friends, but always be very mindful of other people's perceptions are usually from experiences that they have had that draw conclusions of what they can and can't achieve. There's a whole thing on all these universal laws and why I know that and why I'm sharing that. And so more to come on that. I definitely have a podcast episode that I will be sharing about the laws of the universe. If you have any questions on specific laws, let me know. I know I'm throwing a lot of different potential future topics at you, but we're just going full speed ahead for 2026. So that is my thing on other people, getting advice from other people, and the caveat with that. So I would say, kind of going back to what I was talking about with the negative spiral, like if you're in a negative spiral or you have a limiting perception, that is something that is going to cloud your own judgment and connecting to your own internal guidance system, because Connecting to your intuition is like connecting to your higher self, which is you. I'll go into this in a future episode, but it's basically you without all of the societal programming that I talked about in the beginning of the episode, without all the limiting beliefs of things that have happened in your life, without limiting perceptions, without like the matrix style thing. Your higher self is going to always have the perception that is most aligned with source, very high frequency, very expansive, limitless type of things. And it's not going to let these societal things get into the way. So when you're connecting with your intuition, you're connecting with your higher self, who knows best for you. When you're not able to really distinguish between the two, you may accidentally be mistaking that inner guidance system, aka connection with your higher self, to your human ego self of kind of like a fixed, limited mindset of what you are capable of. When you doubt your capabilities and you doubt your decisions and ideas, you are probably having negative perceptions that are skewing your ability to know what's right for you. It's an art and a science to be able to distinguish between the two. So I would say a good example that ties into a lot of this topic that I'm talking about is my experience of my journey of Marea Manifest. I talk about it more in the Where I've Been first episode of season 2 podcast. But basically, when I started Marea Manifest, it was on an intuitive inner guidance nudge from my higher self to talk about, Marea Manifest talks about manifestation, right? Demystifying manifestation and just talking about all of this universal laws, neuroscience, subconscious reprogramming, identity shifting type of work, which was, where my passion was and where a lot of my story was and how I personally changed my own life. And all the self-image stuff, which, I feel like it used to be like heavily referred to as self-concept back when I first got into this work, but I prefer the term self-image. I think it just makes more sense to me. But so that was what my initial pull was to make this business into. And so then I, over time, had let my limiting beliefs come in on if I could do this and be successful. I had a lot of limiting beliefs and negative perceptions that, there were already so many manifestation coaches, so many other manifestation people on TikTok talking about this stuff. How could I, break into that when there's all these people that are so far ahead of me? My low self-image would come out where I would feel like other people maybe were better at it than me. And so I had let all of those limiting beliefs cloud my judgment so much that I ended up seeking advice outside of me from, industry experts that, are experts in, the funnel and the marketing and the niching down and this and that. And I had followed guidance from somebody outside of me as a niching expert to narrow in on love and relationship, manifest your soulmate type of coaching. Because I had gotten the advice that I couldn't be successful with just a broader manifestation topic. I had to niche down into love and relationships if I really wanted to be successful, especially because that was like the thing that I felt like I really mastered and made like my biggest transformation thus far. So I basically took a limiting belief, took advice outside of me, and then let that go against my inner guidance system. And so that is how your own limiting beliefs and your negative perceptions are going to lead you to seek outside of you and go against what you think is right. And now here I am back, now that I've really reconnected with my intuition, connected with my inner guidance system. I know that this is the right path for my business going forward. And that is why I have came back into, the broader spiritual topics of manifestation, universal laws and neuroscience, energetics, identity shifting, all of that type of stuff. And, really honed into the intuition component because of how important it is to keep me on path. I let other people dictate things for me in the past, and that's taken me off path. So that's kind of like a story to show you how your own limiting perceptions can take you away from your inner guidance system. Hopefully that kind of helps put everything into perspective with seeing how your own low self-image, limiting belief systems and your negative perceptions can take you away from following your inner guidance system. Or like, for example, you have an idea that you should do something, like have a poll to start posting or to create a business, but you're worried about what other people think, when you are worried about other people's perceptions outside of your own, that is also going to take you off path from your inner guidance system. And that kind of goes back to the primal type of thing I was talking about with societal programming, where you want to fit in with everybody else. You want to be accepted by people. It kind of goes into the people pleasing in a little bit of a way. You know, you're doing things not because it is right for you. You're doing things because you feel like you have to be loved, to be accepted, to fit in. And it is scary to go against the grain, you know, like I currently am going through this right now. You know, I had and I'm going to talk about this in another podcast episode, but I have had this business idea like on my heart for a long time. I would say the first iteration of this business idea came to me during COVID. Like honestly, like on the brink of my spiritual awakening, I was like already starting to download stuff in from my intuition, but I did not act on it until 3 years later in 2023. I finally was just like, enough is enough. I am friggin' making this TikTok account, making this Instagram account. I don't care how cringy it's going to be or what people will think of me. At this point, I'm no longer letting other people's decisions affect me living out what I know is best for me. Like the longer I was in HR, because at the end of the day, another great example, I've probably highlighted this in a couple episodes before, but I loved this type of work back when I was in high school, but I didn't really know exactly how to do it because of the way our society is programmed. I had taken an AP Psych class in high school, and I just loved everything about the human mind and why we create certain belief systems, certain emotions, why we do what we do, what makes people tick, like anything human behavior wise, I was passionate about from a very young age. And so that's why I led to majoring in psychology. And ultimately, I decided to do human resources because it was the realistic, safe route, you know, that my parents praised, my teachers praised, and, you know, something that was stable and something I was, you know, able to do, right? Like I talked about earlier. So I had bits and pieces that I did enjoy of that work, and I ultimately did it for about almost 10 years. I'd say like maybe like 8-ish years before I left. It got to the point where I just knew that long term I was not meant to just go up the ladder in corporate HR. I was not meant to be in corporate. I was not meant to be someone else's, you know, subordinate and have this boss that's telling me what to do, even though it doesn't feel right. You know, there are a lot of things that come with HR that don't feel good. And, you know, I didn't like to have to terminate people and put people on performance plans. And, you know, there were certain things about protecting the company and not the employee that I didn't always agree with. And I wanted to not have to be in a job that made me go against my internal guidance system. And so it got to the point where I was like, I'm done worrying about what other people think. I am going to do the scary thing and go after my internal guidance system dream of starting my own business and talking about spirituality and manifestation. And I'd say even most recently, I still had blocks with this because I had other accounts that were directly tied to the accounts with all my friends and family. And most recently, I followed my internal guidance system, my intuition, telling me to not keep this separate hidden account. I mean, it wasn't hidden in a sense, but there was like an underlying subconscious fear of what people would think of me. And I just started posting on my real personal account and am just talking about my business, my spirituality, my belief systems. And I'm so happy I did it. That was a form of self-love for me, to be more authentically myself and to follow what I thought was right instead of living to please other people or to worry about what others think over going after my dreams. You know, you get to a point where you're like, enough is enough. I need to go after this. Now I would like to close out after this spiel, hopefully you're enjoying it, on how to begin waking up your inner guidance system. So steps that you can take away today after this deep discussion that we've had. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, on what you can do going forward. So I would say the first thing is start questioning everything that you're doing, that is being done, that is normal. Start really getting the deeper layers of the why behind why you are doing things. And that is going to open up so much awareness to if you are doing things because you genuinely want to, because it's a genuine heart pull, or you're doing something because someone else told you to do it or because you feel like you have to do it. Like you really want to be super clear on your intentions, and the best way to start gaining that awareness is by questioning everything. And so, for example, a really great way to start doing this is thinking about, I would say, start thinking about, you probably already have certain ideas. Think about different areas of life where you aren't really feeling very fulfilled. Think about why you're at that point in your life, right? Think about, for example, if you're unfulfilled in your job, why did you get into that job? What led you to do that job? Was it a parent that told you to do that? Did you feel like you couldn't be successful in the thing that you really wanted to do? So this was the safe bet. Did you feel like, you couldn't leave this job because you couldn't find a better one? Like really, really question your motives as to why you are where you are. And that is going to change everything. And I would say like when it comes to questioning everything, aside from just like the things in your life, question everything that is you are being told as well. So as a general rule of thumb, when you are hearing information from someone, whether it's a friend or it's a podcast or it's a video on social media, some girl telling you what she eats in a day to get her dream body, or what someone else did to make tens of millions of dollars online, whatever it is, like if it sounds limiting, this is one of the best takeaways you could have here. If it sounds limiting, if it feels restrictive, or if it makes your pay attention to your body. If it makes your stomach sink in or it makes your chest feel tight, like it just feels like you have to sacrifice something, or that it isn't fully possible, or there's some type of limiting piece attached to it, that is your inner guidance system telling you that this information isn't right. There could be pieces of it that are right, but it's not source truth. It is not high frequency, because high frequency source truth information is always going to feel like lighter, expansive. It's going to feel not limiting, but limitless. It's going to make you feel like you can go after the big things in life and that anything is possible. If you are hearing things that make you feel really restricted, it is not the type of info that you should be following. And that's when you should really question it. Because anything, if it is heart led, you can achieve it. And that is a guaranteed possibility. So that sums up the first thing about questioning everything. The second piece that I want to talk about for how to begin waking up your inner guidance system is to become a master observer. So you want to observe your thoughts, your actions, your emotions, because these are all clues that are going to help you understand what limiting beliefs you have, what emotions are feeling misaligned. And it's going to show you that these things don't match up with your inner guidance system. Okay, so I'm going to go into some examples of how this can play out in real life. So you want to really start to notice things, okay? Notice the thoughts that you're having, because I'll say most people have so many thoughts that they are not aware of, and we are in such a culture of being distracted, whether it's, always being listening to something in like our off times, like we're traveling in the car or we're taking a walk. Like we rarely ever just sit in silence and hear ourselves think. We're usually multitasking, or there's whatever, you're talking to different people all day long. You rarely take the time to hear what you're actually thinking. And so you need to just start at the very baseline, observing your thoughts. And that is going to help you start connecting to your inner guidance system, because you are going to see if these thoughts are things that you think, or if they're a result of a limited perception. And when you'll know it's a limited perception based on what I said before. If it feels restrictive, if it feels like it takes you away from the possibilities of achieving something you desire in life, it is not right. It's a limited perception. And so the way that you are going to start to connect your inner guidance system, it's not the full picture, because emotions are... they're two sides of the coin, the thing about emotions. So, and I'll get into that with one of the other pieces I talk about with emotions, but you do want to notice your emotions, especially when it comes to certain thoughts and situations, as you're a master observer. So when you feel an emotion, for example, like say you feel sad, or you feel like depressed, or you feel hopeless type of emotion, those are usually because you have belief systems, perceptions, or thoughts, or you're living out certain things in your life that are misaligned with your path in life, what your higher self wants for you, how source perceives you, or, you're ignoring your inner guidance system. Those emotions are going to be flagging for you that you are out of alignment with what the most fulfilling aligned path for you is. So start paying attention to those types of emotions, because you're going to start to see under the deeper levels that you are ignoring your inner guidance system with whatever those emotions are tied to. So that's that. And then the other thing, and then actually before I go into that one, I want to talk about regulating your nervous system. That was the fourth thing I had down, but it kind of lines up well with the emotion piece. So while emotions are really important and they are very good data markers, you also want to be aware of if your nervous system is unregulated. So like those feelings of anxiety, fear, anger, just like very impulsive type of emotions, they're usually because you've ignored things for so long that these emotions are getting bigger and louder to get your attention. But it's also very important that to connect with your inner guidance system, connect with your intuition, that's a subtle internal knowing. It's going to be a lot more quiet, and anxiety and fear and those bigger type of emotions, they are going to be loud, and they're going to usually be your ego. Your intuition is a lot quieter. Your ego is loud because it does not want to be replaced. It wants to keep its job of keeping you alive and safe, those primal instincts, right? So that's important. And so I would say some things that can help you regulate your nervous system that I really love, and this is all very nuanced, but from experience, I really enjoy EFT. I really enjoy journaling, just brain dumping, like having the awareness of the thoughts that you're thinking by just dumping it on paper is really helpful. But also, a lot of people struggle with spinning thoughts. So you're just kind of spinning your thoughts, spinning your wheels in your head, but your brain, based on, just neuroscience, if you're not getting the stuff down on paper, your brain is going to keep repeating it because it thinks you're going to forget it. Like think about, like when you go to bed and you are thinking about something you have to do the next day, but you didn't write it down. So your brain is just like looping before you go to bed. Like, don't forget to do this. Don't forget to do this. And you just need to write it down. And then your brain can be like, all right, we wrote it down. We're not going to forget it. We're good. We can let this thought go. That is what journaling can really do for you. So that is something else that's really important. And at the end of the day, when you have a regulated nervous system, when you are calm, you're in tune with your body, it's not all over the place, and you're not all over the place mentally either or emotionally, you can open up your inner guidance system and start hearing that internal subtle feeling or voice, whatever comes through for you. So those two kind of went hand in hand. And then lastly, I just want to say self-image work. So building up more belief in yourself, more trust in yourself, more trust in your abilities, believing in your ideas, doing the self-image work around that is so important. There's so many ways. I can't even bring it into this episode because this episode is already way longer than I thought it was going to be. But there are so many ways that you can do this. So if you're interested in this topic, I can talk about it deeper in a future episode. But this is a lot of the work that I teach my clients and my one-on-one mentorship students on. This is so big to mastering your intuition, is all of the self-image work for believing in yourself and trusting your inner knowing. And so that would be, I would say, the last thing on that part. So there were 4 things that I just went over on how to start waking up your inner guidance system. And just to kind of wrap up with this, like doing these things and having the awareness of all the things that were covered in this podcast episode, this is the path to take control over your own life, to start feeling like you have free will. You have the freedom to create the life that you desire, okay? Because at the end of the day, you are meant to follow your own heart-led desires in this lifetime. They were divinely planned for you. I would say in addition to that, if you want to just stop spinning your wheels trying to follow other people's advice and it's not working for you, you're just stuck every time because you're trying to do what they said or you're trying to do what they said, and then you go back and forth, and then you're just in a loop of self-doubt and feeling like you can't get anything done. You want to be able to start trusting your inner guidance system, because that is essentially going to be the shortcut path to achieving your goals, because you're actually doing what you're built for and what the path that's right for you. So that's another thing I really want to talk about, or want to just highlight. And then no longer living in indecisiveness. It is friggin' exhausting, I know, trust me, to not know what decision to make. And when you are connected to your intuition, to your internal guidance system, you are going to know the right decision to make, and you're not going to need to ask 80,000 people and mull over it for 6 months before you actually make a decision. So that's really fucking great too. So there's that. And then I would just say, like, one more thing to highlight, your intuition is the best tool that you could ever have to reach your full potential and manifest your dream life. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope it was really life changing. I hope that you can take these 4 things that we went over and start waking up your own internal guidance system and start honing your intuition and start, reaching your full potential in life, living a life that feels fulfilling and aligned to you, and consciously create the life that you daydream about. That is my intent. And I hope that you really enjoyed this podcast and got a lot of life-changing information out of it. Again, if you enjoyed it, please follow me on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please rate this podcast 5 stars if you enjoyed it, just so I can continue giving you this amazing, free, life-changing content to the best of my ability. The more that you support the podcast, the more the word gets out and the more people can have their lives changed as well. If you think a friend would enjoy this podcast episode, send it his or her way. Also, I just want to remind you guys that if you leave a review, just send me a screenshot either on Instagram or via email of the review, and I will send you my 2026 Full Potential Planner for free. All right, guys, I will talk to you in the next episode. Happy 2026.